Hi everyone, in my previous content I have illustrated ASRock, one of their refreshed motherboard which belongs to the Phantom Gaming series. That is none other than the Z790 Riptide Wi-Fi. If you guys are curious about this motherboard and want to know what's its capability, you can click on my top right hand corner where you have the information and it will take you to the content of this motherboard. For today I'll be talking about its bigger brother Nova. And before I begin, I'd like to thank ASRock to have provided this marketing sample for me to share with you guys, and also to Tech Dynamic to have done the arrangement on the delivery. Let's begin. Before I begin, I'd like to make a confession. I do appreciate ASRock to provide me with the marketing sample, be it the Nova Wi-Fi or the Riptide Wi-Fi, but this marketing sample does not come with a box nor with any accessories. It only comes with a Wi-Fi antenna and that's it. So out of curiosity, right, I was in touch with a good friend who recently told me that he purchased this board from Newegg, as this is not available in Singapore. So at Newegg, he purchased this board at $439 SGD, and for the Riptide, right, the pricing back then was $395. I believe right now you have increased the price due to the popularity. Now, speaking of which, right, I was just curious how the whole package looked like, and I managed to get the whole package from my friend. Thank you, Jonathan. Now, this was the box that is packing this Nova, and look at the quality of the box. My goodness, all the efforts that I've actually do on the imprint is impressive. Plus the back, as you can see, nicely done. And I was shocked with all the accessories that's come with this Nova motherboard, which I'm going to go through with you guys. Now, when you unbox the motherboard itself, right, these are all the accessories. It comes with an instruction manual, followed by this GPU anti-sag bracket, which I will show you how it's being used. And these are the anti-sag GPU bracket screws and such. The Wi-Fi antenna. This time the Wi-Fi antenna is rather unique, whereby it has a V shape. This belongs to the Phantom Gaming family. You see, it's so neat, nice look. The only thing that I would want the Wi-Fi antennas to have, right, is magnet, but this is actually double-sided tape, but still doesn't matter because this is still some weight, so you just stay at position, no problem. And you'll be provided with this ARGB splitter where you have one ARGB connector to your motherboard, 3-pin 5V ARGB connector, and the other will split into 3, so you can connect 3 ARGB devices to this. But please take note on the amperage on your ARGB header. I believe this is 3 ampere, so do not overload plugging more and more, split more ARGBs, so take note on this. And you'll be provided with M.2 standoffs and the M.2 screws. There are total of 5 here. And something I wish to let you guys know is that it doesn't come with this kind of package this way. In fact, individual screw come with individual package, which is, let's see, where did I place it? Oh, which is this. There are so many packages, so I lump them up together to show you that there are 5 pieces of the standoff, 5 pieces of the M.2 screws. Given a special keycap, a case badge, two sets of SATA cable, where you have one which is right angle, one which is straight, same to this pack, right angle and straight. 3 sensor probe, where one end you have 2 pin and the other end is the sensor to detect temperature. So with this 3 sensor, right, the board itself has 3 sensor where you connect to, and you can just place this sensor to whatever components that you want to detect the temperature. This ASRock Z790 Nova Wi-Fi, coming from the Phantom Gaming series, is an ATX form factor motherboard, and the construction of the PCB is of 8 layer. Now, I wasn't given any instruction to peel or not to peel, but things that doesn't belong to me, I will not peel. Thanks to a friend to have his permission to peel off and to show you guys. Thanks, Jonathan. So this is how it looks like on the design on the M.2 armor shield, and this is at the top. And if you notice, right, at the top, this section here, in fact, this is where the ARGB effect is. and also along the bottom section of the M.2 shield, there are also ARGB effects. The measurements of this motherboard as follow. From here to here is at 245mm, and from here to here is 305mm. As for the side VRM thickness and the rear I/O heatsink thickness, measuring from the top of the side VRM to the motherboard is at 35mm, and at the rear I/O from the top of the heatsink to the motherboard is 45mm. Looking at the top, starting from this section, you'll be given two very large heatsinks to cool your VRM. The power phase of this motherboard is at 20+1+1 with 90A choke. At this section where you cater a 1700 or 1851 socket, this is meant for you to plug an Intel processor of generation 12, 13, or even the current, which is generation 14. This is how the pinout looks like. At all times, please leave this cover closed unless you place a processor and to lock in place. If not, if you expose, right, you might accidentally dent the pins and you can't use the motherboard. So make sure if you didn't place any processor and lock in place, make sure it's closed. In this section, you'll be provided with 4 Dimm slots. They run in dual channel and it only meant for DDR5. And it has a max capacity of 192GB with a XMP max profile 8000. Now this board have catered 3 PCIe slots, which you can see here, 1, 2, 3. The top PCIe slot, this is Gen 5 running on 16X. The middle is Generation 4, which run on X4. And the last is Generation 3, which run on X1. Besides this board also provides you with plenty of storage. There are a total of 6 M.2s. Let me just expose and show you. For the top slot, all is needed to remove off the armor shield is to press this down and to pull it up. This will expose the first M.2. For the rest, right, you will need to unscrew all this with screwdriver and to remove off the armor shielding. And you will expose all the slots. As mentioned to you, there are a total of 6. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Now take note on the arrangement of how it's being controlled by the chipset and the CPU. For this 3, which is the first M.2 slot and the second M.2 slot together with the PCIe slot, these 3 are controlled by your CPU. Reason being, right, this M.2 is only able to cater for Generation 5 M.2 SSD. If you have a Generation 4, do not plug it over here. Instead, plug it on the second one. And since the second one is being controlled by your CPU, right, there are no compromises on speed. So this is why they have actually designed it this way. And for the rest of the M.2, which is this, and this, followed by the PCIe slot, all these are controlled by the chipset, which is the Z790. I wanted to point out, for those of you purchase a M.2 which is of Generation 5 and you have populated on this slot which is catered for Generation 5, do take note, once you populate this first slot which is Gen 5, your PCIe slot where you plug your graphic card, right, you will not run at full X16. Instead, you will run at X8. Another additional point whereby if you populated all the M.2s, right, you don't have to worry to purchase additional heatsink. Reason being, right, it's being covered with all this armor shield, which has a thermal pad at the bottom. And for the Generation 5, which is running very hot, right, you don't have to worry at all. Reason being, the heatsink is very, very thick. It's more than enough to dissipate the heat off from your Generation 5 M.2 SSD. Now, besides this, right, ASRock have improved on their locking mechanism, which I love so much. In the past, when you lock a M.2 SSD, you will need to have a tiny screw to screw onto the SSD. Else, what they have done, right, with the refresh board, be it this or the Riptide, there is this locking mechanism at the end of the M.2s. Let me zoom in and show you. Okay, take note on the take note on this slot over here. So when you slot in the M.2, right, you just unlock the clip, place your M.2 in, place it in place, and with this clip, right, you just clip it on, and you'll be secured. To release this, just let go. See, it's as easy as that. So all these clips are located at the end of each M.2 slot, which is very convenient. Before I talk about the connection, this motherboard has a very good cooling system, and I'm not gonna lie, it reminds me of my X570 Taichi board, where the construction rate of the cooling is similar. Let me show you what I meant. Now, if I were to flip to the back, you will see this back plate to enforce the structure of the motherboard. Now, these are the VRM areas. Take a look at the inside. Okay. Do you see? There is a thermal pad inside. Same goes to this side. Do you see it? So meaning to say, right, the heat dissipation off from the VRM, not only to the heatsink at the front, but the whole plate is in fact absorbing the heat from the VRMs, which will dissipate even more heat. So that's why I say that the cooling solution of this motherboard is fantastic. And besides this, let me just show you another example of how well this is being cooled. Upon further investigation on the cooling method that what ASRock have implemented on this board, I've checked out on their website regarding about the rear I/O, and I saw how it's been mounted and such. I was very curious. I wanted to show you the pictures, but I feel that showing you the real thing, right, is a real deal. So I got to apologize to Jonathan. So sorry about this, but rest assured your motherboard is in good hands. As you can see, I removed off the top I/O heatsink. In fact, this is also a heatsink. So the mechanism is pretty straightforward, whereby there is a heat pipe over here. So whatever heat that is transferred over here, right, it might go to here. And having an active fan, some of you might not like it, but for me, I'm okay, so long you run at a moderate speed, and it will dissipate heat much more. And besides this, right, this is not only the area that it dissipate the heat. Besides this and the back, which I've shown you, this is the additional piece. And I found out that this whole thing is full aluminium. It's not like whereby the design of it, right, it's whole plastic, which I've taken off, as you can see. Okay. Anyway, this design, this plate here, the ARGB plate here, right, is held by 8 screws. So I deliberately taken off. So as you can see, a very well designed and well thought into details. ASRock, well done. As you have cut out, and this is full aluminium. So the heat will dissipate not only through this two heatsink or the back, and also this. And another good engineer sample from ASRock is that to remove off this whole plate, right, if in the event, if let's say this is out of warranty and I need to change the fan, it's easily done. I don't have to remove all this chunky VRM or to remove off the back plate. All is needed is just 2 screws over here, which hold this whole plate in place. But of course, for those of you watching, right, please do not do this if you are not experienced, and if your board is under warranty, don't do this. Just happened that I just want to show you guys that I'm excited with how it's been engineered. Well done, ASRock. Before going through with all the connection point, I'd like to talk about the onboard audio. Now, this board is equipped with a 7.1 channel audio codec, which is the Realtek ALC 4082. Now, as for connection, I'll start off with the rear. I always miss this out. Now we have one 4-pin PWM fan connector over here. Then the lower left, this is meant for your front I/O headphone and microphone jack, followed by another 4-pin PWM fan connector, a Thunderbolt connector, whereby in the event if you want to purchase a additional Thunderbolt port, which is PCIe format, so you plug it to your PCIe slot, which is down here. Then there is this cable, right, you need to plug to this port over here. And to activate this port, you will need to go to UEFI to enable this port in order for you to use the Thunderbolt port. Next will be a 12-volt RGB connector, a 3-pin 5-volt ARGB connector, two USB 2.0 port, additional two more 4-pin PWM fan connector. There are a total of 3 T sensor or temperature sensor, which I showed you earlier with the 3 cables. You can plug it over here, and to place the sensor, right, whatever component you want to detect temperature, you can just place it there. So there are a total of 3. You have a reset switch, a power switch. This is handy when you want to test your motherboard outside the case. So you can just press this switch instead of pressing the case power switch and reset switch and such. Over here, these are the headers for your front I/O, which is the power switch, the reset switch, the hard disk LED, and the power LED indicator. Moving along the front, this is the ESPI debug header. This is meant for advanced user, whereby they have this device that diagnoses the system while it's running, showing on the LCD all the errors and such. So there's this cable that connects to this. Next will be a TBM module header. Now you have a total of 4 additional SATA port. In the event in the past whereby if you populate any M.2s, right, your SATA port will be sacrificed. But for this board, which is built unique, you don't have to worry about that. Even if you to populate all the M.2, total 6, you still can add 4 more SATA hard disks, which is like total giving you, 10 slot of storage, plenty of storage, so you don't have to worry that you go without storage. Next, these two connectors in fact are 3.2 headers meant for your front I/O type A USB port. Why they give you 2 is in the event if your case have 2 of this connection, right, you will provide more USB type A port, which is version 3.2. Another additional 4-pin PWM fan header. This is meant for your type C front I/O connector to connect to this, and the transfer rate of this is 20 gigabits per second. Next will be a 24-pin header, whereby you plug your PSU 24-pin connector to this to supply to all the power to the rest of your motherboard components. A debug LED. This is where it detects the code. This is very useful. Now moving up, you have 2 3-pin 5V ARGB connector, and there are 3 additional 4-pin PWM fan headers. One is for CPU, one is for pump, and one is for VRM, additional VRM fan. In fact, you can use this as a case fan too, not an issue. Then at the back, you will see that there are 2 8-pin EPS cable or transit connector, where you connect the EPS 8-pin from your PSU to this connector over here. At all times, I would say that you use only one. It's more than enough to supply default settings on the processor and such, or slight overclocking. Unless you're doing extreme overclocking and you need stable current, drawing more V cores and such, then plug 2. Especially for people who do liquid nitrogen overclocking, then you will need to plug 2. But as mentioned, at all time, just one will be enough. At the rear I/O, these are all the ports that is provided. Starting from the left, this is a clear CMOS button. Now at the top, this is a display port at version 1.4, and at the bottom is a HDMI port which support version 2.1. And these 2 ports make use of the integrated graphic on your processor. You'll be given total of 9 USB type A port. With the first 2 over here in black, they are version 2.0. The rest are all version 3.2. Having the first 3 over here, these are generation 1, and the rest generation 2. Now what's the difference? Generation 1 will have a transfer rate of 5 gigabits per second, else for generation 2 will have 10 gigabits per second. Right at the bottom here, this is a type C port which is generation 2.2 and has a transfer rate of 20 gigabytes per second. Same with the front type C port. At the top over here, this is the RJ45 socket, where this is the Intel NIC, which is the E3100G, and has a transfer rate of 2.5 gig. Over here you have 2 antenna socket where you can plug your antenna and to enjoy Wi-Fi 7, and it does support Bluetooth of version 5.4. Over here is the audio port, where you have first the microphone in, the speaker out, and a SPDIF port. As mentioned earlier, this motherboard does come with a anti-sag GPU mounting bracket, and how you use this bracket is pretty straightforward. You'll be given with the bracket, the holder, And all these screws over here, this is meant for you to match your motherboard standoff, and this is for the holder itself. Now let me just zoom in. Assuming this is actually the motherboard tray and it has a standoff, so these two screws, when you screw the motherboard to the standoff, right, do not screw them. What you need to do is just to place this mounting bracket with this touching the brim of the motherboard and align the hole to the standoffs. So this is how it's been done. Then after which, right, you'll be provided with two sets of screws depending on your motherboard thickness on the standoff. So you can see the screws are of different size, as in like the diameter. So you come in one set. Assuming that this is a thicker motherboard, I will make use of this. Thicker screw standoff, I'll make use of this. So once you have aligned this, as in like flush this to the brim of the motherboard and to align the standoff, you can start to screw this to the standoffs. So assuming that this is done, so once this is done, right, okay, let me just put this over here. Okay, once this is done, right, slot your graphic card. Okay, slot your graphic card. Let me just zoom out a bit. Yep, slot your graphic card. So this is the base of your graphic card. Make use of this holder where you can see there's this rubber pad, right? This is meant for you to support the base of the graphic card. Do not place your graphic card in between, alright, to this. This is wrong. You should be placing this way. Then there is a grooving over here. Align it to the slot over here. So when you slot your graphic card, right, okay, let me just pull it down. So when you slot your graphic card, assuming it's down here, the base of the graphic card touching this, you align it, you push it according to where you want to level your graphic card so that you will not sag. Once that's done, right, all is needed is to screw in the screws, either one of them. So once you have screwed in, assuming you have done that, tighten it, this will be secure and your card will not sag. So this is how you mount the GPU anti-sag bracket. I'll be showing you the UEFI in a minute, but before I do so, these are the areas where you have ARGB effects. The rear I/O and the underglow of the last M.2 armor shield. Now when I start the machine, right, you will take note that there will be a LED blinking over here. In fact, these are the error codes if there is an error on the system itself. So let me just start. See, as you can see, so it's doing its work to boot up, doing the memory training and such. So once that's done, right, it will boot up to the system, to the UEFI interface. See, it's booted up. It's pretty fast. In fact, this is even faster than Riptide. Now this is the interface of the easy mode in UEFI. Things to take note, like what you have plugged in, the processor on my left, and the RAMs that you populated under the DRAM information, where you have the Dimm slot to show you that the RAMs that are seated in. And at this section over here where it says storage configuration, right, this is the part where you plug your M.2 SSD or your 2.5 inch or 3.5 inch hard disk, right. Any connection point that you connect, right, you will show over here, be your SATA or your M.2 slot. And oh, I forgot to mention that in this easy interface, right, you'll be able to trigger XMP profile. Let me just show you. So when you trigger this and save, right, it will boot to this profile. It's a one-click thing, which you don't have to worry much about it. At the middle of this section here, where it tells you the CPU temperature. Now this is at idle temp. My room is pretty warm. That's why, even though it's at open bench test. And this is the live graph of the temperature. It will also show you motherboard temperature, the CPU voltage that is drawing in order to run this processor, and the CPU quality. I'll talk about the CPU quality in a short while. Now, for power setting, right, when you enable this, which says load Intel base power limit, meaning to say, for this processor, which is 14700K, is running max, or should I say have a power limit to 253. So if you to enable this, this means to say that telling the motherboard that, hey, look, I've kept you to 255 watt, do not go beyond that. So this is what it meant. But if you feel that you can pull much more wattage just to push the clock frequency of the CPU, right, you can go ahead, by all means, set to disable. By the way, this is by default disable. Underneath here where it says fan status, right, this is where it tells you what are the fans is being plugged to your fan header on your motherboard. So it will reflect all the RPMs. And in easy mode, to tune all this fan headers, right, manually, as in like your fan curve, you can click on this fantastic tuning, which I'm going to click over here, and it will show you this graph here with all the headers of your motherboard. And of course, ignore the MOS fan. This is the small fan which I show you. Okay, this underneath this rear I/O heatsink. So this is fixed. You can't. I mean, you can set the RPM and such, which you can see over here. Right? You see, if I click this, I can set silent, performance, and such, or maybe custom to do your points. I'm not going to do that. Now, for the rest, it's the same. You can do it individually. And for all this, right, CPU fan 2 and chassis fan 1 all the way to 5, right, you have a selection of what to detect as the like. Okay, for example, chassis fan 1, you can choose to do your fan curve, the temperature that is based on your CPU or your motherboard, or even the 3 sensors that is provided. You can do that. But of course, when you do this, right, you need to do custom. So how this works is that, let's say I select this chassis fan 1, then these are the point over here. As you can see, if I were to point the first point, right, you will see over here. See, these are the, okay, using 2 mouse is kind of difficult. All right, these are the points which I highlight. See, so you can go point to point. Like the first point, let's say, is at 30, temperature is at 30 degrees, right? How much fan rotation you want it to be, as in like what's the speed of the RPM, you can declare. See, as I move up, you can declare. So every time when you set these points over here, right, to your liking, you can just save. So this temperature that you set, right, for example 30 degree Celsius, right, is based on readings on the CPU monitor, or if you select motherboard, it will be the motherboard temperature. So when the motherboard, let's say, reach 30 degrees Celsius, right, your fan will be running at 48% PWM. So this is what it meant. But of course, I will not save this. So this is the function of doing your manual curve, which a lot of you like it. Now, besides this, right, if you do not want to set custom points, right, you can make use of ASRock profile. They have the silent profile. As you look at the curve over here, see, or you can set it to standard. The curve is over here, slightly higher. Performance is even steeper. So the steeper you go up, right, your fan will ramp up more. Or you can do full speed, which is a flat line, which I'm not going to do it because it's going to be very noisy. So let me just discard this and bring you back to the easy mode. So this is how you toggle it. And over here, right, when you do the first boot up, the system will detect what kind of cooling you're providing. For me, I'm plugging into a 280 liquid AIO. That's why it will select as 280. And having to say this, right, there is a power limit on all these settings. And why do I say that? Now, if you to provide a 280 liquid AIO cooling solution, right, it will automatically set the power limit to 253, meaning to say your system will not pull more than 253. Or if you set to 360 or 420, this is meant for you to pull more than 253. And inclusive, make sure that you do not enable this, the Intel based power limit. If you do enable this, right, this is of no use. It will not be unlimited. So make sure that you disable this in order for you to pull more voltage to pump your clock frequency. So these are the things that you can play with on easy mode. Then on the top right hand corner where you say the time and date, you can of course set your time and date and to apply. Instant flash is meant for your BIOS flash, where you have latest BIOS on your motherboard and you can upgrade it or update it using this function over here. Of course, you will need to plug your USB with your firmware in order to run the instant flash. Now at the top over here, right, all these buttons over here, starting from this is the help info, whereby you tell you all the shortkeys to navigate in this easy mode. Next will be the load default. Assuming that you have set XMP profile and you have set all your fan curve and you do not want to save them, you just want to reset, you can just click this and to load default. See, when I click on yes, right, take a look at the XMP profile, you will be gone. See? So this is resetting all your settings without saving. Next will be discard changes. That means to say whatever you have configured you do not want, you just discard and you just reboot. Now for polychrome RGB on off, take a look at the RGB effect on the motherboard itself. Right now it's on. If I were to trigger off, see, this is what happened. One click, everything is off. And for languages, okay, let me just turn this on. For languages, right, you can set as you want, be it English, Chinese and such. I'll just leave it as it is. Next will be the advanced mode. Now this is the easy mode. For advanced mode, you'll be able to do more control or to configure all your RAM timings and such. In order to go to the advanced mode, either you press this button or press F6, and this will bring you to the advanced mode. And on the advanced mode, you'll be shown with the main section, which is this. Again, your processor status, your RAMs, and on my right, the temperature of your CPU, motherboard, the voltage being drawn, and etc. This will show you everything as a basic description of what you have placed in your motherboard. Next will be OC tweaker. Now for OC tweaker, right, for the first 4 section over here, now in the event, let's say for example this is by default and your, okay, let me just set this back to this. Now your motherboard, everything is done up properly and you boot to Windows, and at Windows, right, it crashes and keep on crashing. You can't have a stable system running. Now do this as a last emergency resource, whereby you can come to the UEFI to do the CPU B-core compensation. And what this does is that when you click, right now it's actually on auto. When you click, right, it will bring you to the level. Each level will pump more V-core to your processor. So this might help to run at a stable process on your processor. So this is what I meant. But at all times, I don't think this is needed. Just set it to auto. Next, earlier on I mentioned on the easy mode, whereby the system will detect for you that what kind of cooling you are doing. As you can see here, and each cooling have a power limit. So take note on this. If you want your processor, let's say for example this processor 14700K and it's at 253 watt max, and you don't want to limit the voltage, you just want to pull further up in order to sustain higher clock speed, you can set it to 360 420, which is unlimited, which is stated over here. Now for the next one, which is the gaming OC preset. Wow, this is actually quite interesting, where you can put stage 1 and stage 2. I've not tried this before, but my friend who actually used this board telling me that if you to set to stage 2, right, your system, all your gaming and the FPS rate will all go up. It's like, fast paced. I've not tried this, but probably, it's actually quite true, because he's actually one of the engineers on this kind of testing all this kind of platform and such. So I believe what he mentioned, but of course you guys have to try it. I will just disable for the moment. Now for CPU indicator, this is whereby you will tell you how good your processor is and what are the safe V-core drawing amperage you should be doing, or voltage you should be doing. As you can see here, right, you will calculate your P-core and E-core, and at the average your CPU quality is at 83, which Jonathan's processor is in fact 83, quality 83, and this are telling you that what it can run. In fact, it can run max at 5.6 gig at this voltage. So this is what you meant. And if you to speed it up for further overclocking, right, you can take the reading over here as in like you want to divide them as P-core and E-cores. So it will tell you that what is the max that you should be using and not above that, in order not to hurt your processor. And of course, some of you are more challenging, you don't even care about this, you will just pump all the way up, but that will be risky. So this is what all about. And related with the bottom section over here where you say top 1, top 10, I believe these gamers will know what is actually going on. Alright, back to this section over here where you say CPU configuration, DRAM configuration, voltage configuration, and FIVR configuration. Now I'll just tell you what I know. Basically, I will not touch on FIVR configuration, but for overclockers, you can take a look what this does. See, these are the things that you can do. Now, back to the main page. I will normally touch these three. First of all, set your RAMs to XMP profile, which you can see here. I'm setting on XMP profile. So when you set this XMP profile, right, you will run at this default profile. And of course, if you are challenging enough, you want to do the RAM timing and such, you can proceed on to the lower section where you can do the cache latency and the timing, the refresh time, delay time, etc. You can do it manually over here. But for me, I'm a lazy fellow, I just set to XMP profile and let it go. Now, the next thing that I will play with is the CPU configuration. Now, one way to do the power limit is using this over here, okay, unlimited or such. But to have more total control, which normally I'll calculate how well the processor can perform without losing any performance, right, I will do undervoting. Now this you can do the P core and E cores, up to you whether you want it to set all or to set some. Okay, what I will touch on basically is the two prominent thing that I will do, which is the long duration power limit and the short duration power limit. Now don't be shocked that ASRock for this board have done a very high wattage. In fact, the system will not do that because they have safeguard limitation on this motherboard. See, just like this one, see, I've limited, so you don't have to worry. Unless you place it to unlimited, then probably you will need to configure over this and to play with the settings. Now, as mentioned to you, right, I've calculated this processor you can run at 5.2 and a random clock speed at 218 watt. So I will limit this at 218. Same goes to the short duration of time. Now, what's the difference between the long duration power limit and the short duration power limit? Well, for long duration power limit, right, is consistently, let's say you want to run at 5.2 gigahertz, it will pull at this voltage. As for short burst, right, it's like random, a short period of time. In fact, you can allow 253 or maybe within the I will do within the processor power limit, 248 or maybe 253, up to you. It's just a short period of time, so it will not hurt the processor. What is more important is actually the long duration power limit, where it consistently will draw this power. So take note on this. So for now, I'll just put it at 218. So these are the two things that I will feeder. There are also other stuff that you can feeder over here, but normally I'll just leave it as it is. I will only touch on the power limit once I know that at this 218 watt, right, my processor will not degrade on performance, instead can yield better results. I'll just leave it as it is. Now next, right, I will do the offset, which is the voltage configuration. Now take note, first step when I do all the CPU configuration, right, that is having this power limit that I've done, right. When I run Cinebench in Windows itself, the temperature at full load for about 30 minutes or so, at full load, the temperature is hovering around 88 degrees Celsius, right, 87 to 88 degrees Celsius. And if I want to pull it down further, right, because you have let the system run at default V core, so this is where it becomes important to set the voltage configuration. I will leave this as stable. For those of you challenging, you will just do overclock mode, but I will not do that. Instead, I'll do the offset. So what offset does, right now it's actually drawing at a 1.4 to 1.39 2 voltage. This is by default. I can do a offset, and to make it a minus value, I'll set this as okay. It's always ASRock motherboard. I love you guys so much. I can run at minus 100 millivolt, which is interpreted as 0.1 volt. Okay, which most of the motherboard can't do this. They can only do 0.05 or 0.075. Anyway, what does this offset do is, instead of running the full 1.4 or 1.395, right, when the system is at load, what it does is it will determine, do it require this much voltage to pump at 5.2 gigahertz or at a random boost clock of 5.6. If it does not read, if it does not need, it will drop down your V core. And having to drop down the V core just nice to pump at 5.2 and random boost clock at 5.6, your temperature will go down. And after testing on this, right, my temperature, the processor temperature, instead of hovering at 87 degrees to 88 degrees Celsius, it dropped down drastically to 85 degrees Celsius, 84 to 85 degrees Celsius. So this is the good point about having offset. And do take note, please do not apply this offset on other motherboard, because other motherboards, they have this so-called I think it's MSET bin or something, which you have to tweak, or microcode they call it. But this does not have. It's very straightforward, which I like the layout most of the time from ASRock. Okay, other than that, this I won't touch. Now, after you have done all your settings, right, and you wanted to save the profile, not a problem. Below here, you'll be able to save your user profile. So when you save, right, it will ask you which slot to save. See, you can just select, rename it, and that will be your profile. Now, in the event if you reset, like clear CMOS, and to reset your system in default, right, this profile that you save will not be erased. It will always be there, so you can reload your profile. So this is pretty convenient. Now, next will be on advanced, on the CPU side, where you can check on your P core and E core the information what you have and such. And of course, you can do your hyper threading, etc., enabling or such. Now, this part here for P core and E cores, right, some of my friends will just disable the E cores, because playing games you only need the P cores. E cores is meant for, well, yeah, for me, I will use it because I use it for work, rendering stuff and to compile stuff. For C state, I wouldn't know what this is. Again, I wouldn't bother. I'm a lazy person. Now, you can set the thermal throttling and such. All this will be controlled within the system itself, so you don't have to worry much. And then the rest is as per normal. I'll just leave it as enable. I won't touch it. Now, for the modern compilation on 3D content and such, or maybe I should say not 3D content, I would say that for content creators, when you're using the video editing tool, right, probably you will just leave this on, the AVX tool, and this is the pass. But if you want to use the AVX 512, you can enable this, but by default this is a disable. Next will be chipset configuration. Now, for chipset configuration, right, the primary graphic adapter is set to auto, meaning to say when you plug a discrete graphic card, it will channel to your discrete graphic card instead of your integrated graphics that is projected from your processor. As you can see, you can actually set onboard or to auto. If you send to onboard, right, even if you plug your discrete graphic card, right, your discrete graphic card will not react. So make sure at the point of time when you want to plug your discrete graphic card, make sure this is at auto. By default, it's auto. Unless you do not have a discrete graphic card and you don't want to waste time for the system to diagnose when it boot up, then set to onboard. These are the resizable bar configuration, which I don't have to explain. Majority of the gamers will know what this is. And this is the clever access memory, which improves the speed on your games and such, and the processing time. Now, for VTD, this is virtual terminal devices. This is meant for if you are working with VMwares and Sandbox. make sure you enable this. This will help in Windows to allocate RAMs for your sandbox and your VMware. Other than that, KDMI link, I will just leave it at Gen 4. Now coming for the PCIe slot here, you have total of 3, which I've illustrated to you, which is here, 1, 2, and 3 on my left. Okay, 1, 2, and 3. So if you to set it auto, right, when you boot up the system, right, you will diagnose and you will diagnose and see what kind of card you're plugging in. For example, let's say your PCIe first slot, you have plugged a discrete graphic card and you know that it's generation 4. You can select accordingly. And let's say your PCIe slot 2, you didn't plug anything, and your PCIe slot 3, you have placed a generation 3 capture card. So by declaring all this, right, when the system boot up, you will bypass all this diagnose and will just go straight. Meaning to say, you're telling the motherboard, hey, look, I'm having a graphic card and I'm using Gen 4. Don't have to bother to detect for me or determine for me what kind of generation card I'm using. Bypass that, please boot to Windows. This is what it meant. But of course, if you want the motherboard to do work, you can just set it to auto. Now, often I've talked about this section over here where it says PCI Express native control and to the PC HDMI ASPM. Now, this section is meant for those people using NVIDIA card and AMD card. You can ignore this. But for those people who are actually using the Intel Arc A750 or the A770 or even some I think it's A580 and such, some of them have complained about the idle wattage, which is pretty high at 40 watt as compared to NVIDIA card or AMD card. For those cards, right, they run on only 8 watt at idle. But for ARC card, right, something very unique, they will run at 40 watt at idle. So have some reading on this, on how to actually tune down the idle wattage on the ARC card. And these are the configuration that you will need to play with. Okay, now for the rest over here, I will not talk much as they are quite standard. These are all the rear I/O port. Now coming for iGPU multiple monitor, you can actually enable this. When you enable this, right, meaning you say, let's say you have 2 monitors, you want to make use one monitor on the discrete graphic card, the other on the integrated graphic on the processor, you can just enable so that the system will say that I allow both to function at a go with split monitor. Next, I will go on. Now, onboard audio, you can disable this. For me, I will disable because, not my friend, but myself. I'm using audio interface, so no point having this hogging to system resources. I can just disable. Then followed by onboard HDMI audio. This, I don't think I need that too. I will just disable, but it's up to you. So all these are the possibility that you can disable or to enable. Now coming to the bottom part here, which is very interesting. Now, on onboard itself, right, if you notice that at the bottom there's a power switch and a reset switch. So when you power down the whole system, right, these two will light up. And at all times will light up. So if you find this irritating, you can set the onboard button LED, right, to off. So at all times it will be off. And if you want to straight away disable the ARGB effects on your motherboard, you can come to the ARGB LED and to turn it off. See, it just turned off. Then for this onboard debug port LED, which is the digital number that's cycling on my left, cycling red over here, right, you want to off it, you can just turn it off. But most of the time people will just leave it on because you want to see what's going on with this system. Alright, so this is chipset. Now storage configuration, well, all this are pretty standard. I guess I don't have to really go through, but one thing that you can do is that during this, right, you can set it to hot plug. Meaning to say your SATA port where you connect to, right, you can eject from Windows and to unplug the whole hard disk, but make sure on this SATA port you declare as hot plug. enable, so you can just unplug it safely. Okay, other than that, Intel Thunderbolt. Okay, this is the place whereby I told you that, okay, looking at the motherboard itself, there is this Thunderbolt port. So if you purchase a Thunderbolt port, you need to enable the header. So this is where you enable the header. ACPI, if you are doing wake up on LAN through LAN connection, you will set this to enable. Probably I will just do another content on how to make use of this. It's pretty useful. Other than that, I don't think I will go into it. Now the style, when you boot up UEFI, you can set it to advanced, up to you. Then all this active page, right, when it first show on advanced mode, you'll be on main. You can select this to show on this subsection over here. Meaning, you say when you boot up, right, you will straight away see, probably let's say OC Twitter, you have set it over here, you will just show you this instead of showing you the main. Okay, now come to tools. This is something which I really love very much. For the ARGB effects on this motherboard, or the devices that you connected on this motherboard, you don't have to install the polychrome on Windows unless you find that convenient. For me, right, I'll just play within the UEFI. Reason being, one, there's no bloatware. Two, it's not system hogging. If you were to do it here instead of in Windows, if you do it in Windows, right, there will be system resources running on the background and such, which is, to me, yeah, you will not kill, but I still prefer not to install any of the application in Windows. Instead, I'll be using this application. So as you can see, right, over here, this control the colors and your ARGB strips, which I'm going to show you here, and also your IO cover, your PCB and such. So let's say I were to do the IO cover. Okay, take a look at the IO cover, right? Okay, the IO cover right now. Right now it's rainbow. I will set it to, for example, set it to static. Okay, right now it's black. If you notice, see, it's in black. I can just do this. See, it's very responsive. I'm circling around the colors. Look at the rear IO. It will just control your rear IO. And if you want to control your M.2 underglow LEDs, just click here. Then you go to, I think it's PCB if I'm not wrong. Yeah, that's right. See? It's over here. So when I turn, see, it will just react. Of course, you can do all the funny function, basic function like breathing. You can even do it individually. Let's say you want your rear IO, right? Instead of breathing, you can set it strobe. Okay, speed up. See, my rear IO is strobing like crazy. You can even set the speed. Okay, so this is actually how you play with the ARGB effects. Okay, let me just bring this back. Okay, the easiest way to set all to react the same, right? Just set to this, and probably I'll bring it back to rainbow. See, all this will be back to rainbow. Alright, so this is how you configure the ARGB on your motherboard. And of course, with those devices that's plugged on the ARGB headers, the 3-pin 5V ARGB connectors, you can do that. Next will be UEFI tag services. I believe some of you have watched my previous video, what I'm talking about. Now, if you have, in the event if you have problems with your motherboard with some of the devices and you want to troubleshoot, seeking for help, you can approach ASRock tech support within this UEFI tech services instead of filling up the form online, and I'll tell you why. When you click on this, right, it will give you a form. You can just submit your name, your phone, your country where you're living, your email and such, and the subject of the problem that you're having, and type in your description. If you have screenshot of what is going on, you can place it in a thumb drive and to attach the picture to this. Then you submit. That's all is needed. And what this submission does, right, it will pull all the information like your PC parts that is connected to your motherboard, like your processor, your RAMs, etc. and etc. It will pull everything in and to submit together with your form. And you will get a response time about 1 or 2 days, which is pretty fast. Else, if you do it on the website, you will have time to type out all the description, all your credential and such, your subject, and you will need to spend a heap of time to actually type out all your PC components, the parts that you fitted on your motherboard. And sometimes the response time is not really that great. Reason being, right, some of the details is being missed out, and they will just respond to you saying that, hey, what are the RAM speed that you're using, or what are the cache cycle of your RAMs are using, or maybe your processor. Okay, which processor is that? Is it a K version or a KS version or whatever? So you have to go through with all the ping pongs on the internet. Else, over here, right, it's just one submission, one click, all data of the UUID of all these components will be put and to submit to the tech support, and they will help you straight. So this is one thing good about this UEFI tech services. Now for SSD secure erase tool, please be mindful when you use this tool. This is meant to secure erase your M.2, but if your M.2 have a application itself to do the secure erase, make use of that. Priority will be that instead of using this, because this, right, I've ever encountered one time whereby I did a secure erase on my M.2, and that particular brand, which I'm not going to name it, got damaged. I can't boot, I can't write, I can't do anything about it. Basically, it's just like a waste paperweight, or not even a paperweight, it's just a wastage. I can't do RMA due to the fact that it's expired. So please be careful. For NVMe sanitization tool, this is meant for fast format, and you can just reuse the M.2 again. Auto driver installer. First time when you install application in, Windows in this system itself, right, when you boot up, as you know, you need to download drivers for your motherboard and such and such. So ASRock have done a wonderful job on this. What they do is, when you first boot up your Windows, fresh installed Windows, it will prompt you to say that, hey, look, I'm going to find the drivers for you, I'm going to install for you, I'm taking care of you, so you don't have to worry about it. So this is a very good function. And a side tip, when that prompt, right, make sure you do the updates. Reason being, right, what ASRock have done, right, they have gathered all the latest driver and to install onto your system, so to give you less problem and less, more time to enjoy the system rather than to fix the driver's issue on your system. Below this section, instant fresh, I don't have to say this. This is meant for, if let's say you want to update your motherboard BIOS, you can use this instant fresh, of course, through the USB method. So this is what it is. Next will be hardware monitor. Now, as you can see, right, the status over here, it will show you the sensor and the temperature of your, your MOSFETs, which is this. Then the rest of the temperature and such, and the speed of your fans that you've connected on this motherboard. These are listed over here. Now, something which I like to explain out. Now, take a look, for example, CPU fan 1. These are my radiator fans. I can do it manually. Okay, I can set to performance. When I set to performance, right, take a look at the fans RPM. See, it's going up. Or I can set it full. These are all the default ASRock settings. See? Or you can do custom curve. Now, I like to do custom curve using this method over here, and I'll explain why. Make sure that first thing when you want to configure any of the fan headers, right, you set this not to auto but to PWM, and provided that your fan is 4-pin PWM fan connector. If you are using 3-pin, right, PWM mode will not work. Okay, moving on. As I mentioned to you, I like to use this more than the graph, which is this, the fantastic tuning. Okay, I never like to use this. It's kind of like clumsy to me, not to you guys. So by using this manual configuration, right, I can set according to what I want. Okay, let me bring this back. Okay, sorry. let me set this back to standard. Now, for example, your radiator fans, I know these are my radiator fans. I can set it to custom. Then I can do the points over here. As in like, first temperature, okay, all this temperature 1, 2, 3, 4, right, in fact, are the points which I showed you earlier, which is this. If I were to do custom, okay, see, these are the 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, and 0.5. So over at this end here, right, the manual configuration is as follow. First temperature that it touches, let's say 30 degrees Celsius on your CPU, based on the fact that this is CPU, you will run at this speed of your fan. If it touches 65 degree, you will run this percentage of your fan. If you run 70, you will run 100, and so forth. Now this is only for CPU fan. If you to do others, right, for example the CPU fan 2, you can select either DC or PWM mode. Okay, why is this so? Because you're able to select what you want to monitor. As you can see here, where does the temperature come from? I mean the source come from. It's either CPU, your motherboard, or the sensors that you have plugged in. So that's the reason why you can select over here which temperature reading to take before you execute your custom curve. Now of course, again, you can select the profile from ASRock, either silent, standard, or performance, or full speed, or you choose to do it yourself. As mentioned over here, see, I can do all this by myself. Now another thing good about this is that whereby if your critical, I mean, let's say your CPU is hitting 80 degree, for example, okay, and you set your critical temperature over here at 80. Oh, sorry. Okay, back here. Now, let's say you set your critical temperature as 80. What it does is, right, when your CPU touches 80 degrees Celsius, it will bypass all your settings over here, and you will just ramp up your fans to 100%. This is to safeguard your CPU from getting overheated. And of course, this is declared by yourself. You can set it to 90, up to you, or 100. Okay, so this is what it does about this critical temperature. Once it hit 80, right, whatever settings you have set here, right, you will bypass, and you will just ramp your fan full. Another thing I want to talk about is that, okay, looking at the legend over here, right, you have your CPU fan 1, CPU fan 2, then the VRM fan, the chassis 1, all the way to 5, right? Now, in fact, all these fans that you see over here, right, now exclude the MOS fan speed. All the fans you see here, right, are rated 2 ampere, except for the CPU fan 1. Reason being, right, I've checked on the specs on the internet regarding about this board. In fact, most of ASRock board come wonderfully. All their headers are 2 ampere unless specific. Except for the CPU fan one, is always at 1 ampere. Now, if you to use this header, okay, if you use this header, right, to connect to a pump, water pump, when you do the custom water loop, you get confused. Oh my god, which one I plug to? Is it the chassis fan 1 or chassis fan 2 or such? You don't have to worry, cause over here you can set, okay, not the CPU fan 1. Over here you can set to water pump. And I don't think you use more than one pump, right? I mean, more than 2 pumps, right? Most of the time it's 1 pump. So with this, right, you will be able to indicate that, oh, I plug this header to a pump, so I know where to control. So from here, right, you can control the curves and such, up to you. And mind you, even if you switch this to water pump, be it you switch to CPU fan, same goes to the VRM fans and such, be it you switch in between them, right, all this will have 2 ampere rating, as like 2 ampere of current to supply to your pump or your fans. And this will be good when you do daisy chain, knowing that the factor that you can plug more fans, but according to the rating, if your fans are rated at 0.5 ampere, right, you can plug max up to 4 fans and not more than that. These are things that you can feather in hardware monitor. Next will be security. In the event if you have set all your settings and you allow your siblings to play with your computer but not to mess with your UEFI configuration, you can set a supervision password. Or if you allow both, as in like, I'm allowing you to play with my UEFI and my PC, but I don't want you to know my password, you can set a user password. So these are the things that you can do. Now for secure boot, this is only meant for people playing games that require secure boot enable. Right now I don't have a M.2, but this is where you should be configuring. You should enable this thing and to set as custom. So this will allow you to play games like Valorant. Now do note, when you set this to custom, right, in the event if you want to do a firmware update on your motherboard, as in like the BIOS, make sure you set this back as custom. If not, the firmware will fail or even prick your board. Okay, I've actually done one time that happens, and you will have to send your board for RMA. Alright, next will be boot. This I don't think I want to go through. You can feather it yourself. This is to speed up the boot up time and such, whether you want to display the logo and such. Now coming to the end, where this is explanatory. Save your changes of what you have done in your UEFI, exit, and you will boot to Windows. Or you discard the changes, exit, boot to Windows. Or you discard the changes, whatever you change, you just want to discard it. Alright. Then next will be load UEFI default, meaning you say you bypass everything, whatever in the past that you've set, you just want to reset it, and you bring to factory reset. So when you boot up the system, right, you will redo the memory training and such. But of course, with this said, when you load this, right, as earlier on I mentioned to you, when you do your profile save under OC Tweaker, this will not be erased, so you can load it back. What do I think about this motherboard? First off, I did a research on this name called Nova. In fact, it's referring to a very tiny star out in the galaxy. Out of a sudden, it just brightened up tremendously as compared to the rest of the star. So this is exactly what happened to this motherboard. I believe the name is related to what it can offer. First off, the design of the motherboard is very sleek. It doesn't overdose with ARGB. It only has the top section and the bottom section. Speaking of the top section over here, right, ASRock have deliberately cut out just to fit this plastic panel, and the rest are aluminium, which provide good cooling solution. And what I like most, in fact, is the cooling mechanism, the way they engineer it. As I show you, when I remove this, there's a active fan below it, and there's heat pipe to channel the heat from here to here and to cool it down. And additional to this whole block here, which is absorbing the heat. And also at the back of this, I'm not going to flip it because this is okay, probably I can flip it. Additional to this, right, this whole back plate in fact acts as a heat absorber. As you can see, there are thermal pads in between the motherboard VRM to this back plate. So it's total cooling solution. And also another fun fact that all these M.2s, right, are covered with armor shield, which is heatsink, and you don't have to worry about purchasing M.2s with heatsink just to cool down the M.2. So this is one good point. Now another thing I'd like to talk about, besides this, right, the clipping mechanism on the M.2s is fast action. You just plug it in and lock, or unlock it to release. And also kudos to ASRock, they have thought about this. In the event, let's say you break these clips, you don't have any replacement, they have provided you with sufficient standoffs and the traditional way of screwing down the M.2. So they have thought this for you, which I do appreciate. And next will be the sensor. You have total of 3, which they are so generous enough to provide you 3 sensors. Though it's not expensive, but this is just a thought. you can plug this sensor and to monitor whatever temperature you want to monitor within the system itself. Now, besides this, right, the strengthening of the RAM slot and the PCIe slot, see, these are all with metal strengthening, so that it will be stable, especially your graphic card when you slot it in. This will not wobble or break or anything, which is good. Now, this board here, right, amazed me by having so much M.2 slot. You will not run out of storage for sure. If you to populate all with 2 terabyte, right, for sure you're going to have it. Even if you don't use this top slot here, which will, you know, one thing bad about it is that your PCIe slot will sacrifice from the rate of x16 to x8 if you populate the top M.2. But it doesn't matter, you still have 5 additional over here, which makes use of, you know, one which makes use of the CPU, whereby it will not compromise the speed, not at all. And on top of it, if you have populated all 2 terabyte and it's filled up, right, you still have 4 SATA port additional. You can plug in your 2.5 inch SSD or your 3.5 inch hard disk, no issue. And speaking about the storage, I like the transfer rate of both the Type-C port. Both are at 20 gigabits per second, which is pretty handy for me. Another good point about this board is that the arrangement of all the fan headers. I can tell you that why I love ASRock that much, because of the fan arrangement and also the amperage. The only fan header that has 1 ampere is only the CPU fan. The rest are all 2 ampere, so I can just plug without worrying daisy chain too much. Just that I need to be worried about the amperage on each fan. If it's 0.5 ampere, right, then for the 2 ampere headers, right, I'll just plug 4 fans and not more than that. Else, I can just plug, if let's say it's 0.2 or 0.3 ampere, right, I can plug max 5 fan or so without any worries. And the location, right, as I mentioned, I like it so much, where the top, you can just plug your radiator fan, then your pump is located over here. Then the one thing they have added extra, which is the VRM fan. I believe they just want to separate the title so that you know what this fan is blowing at. And if you are to place the front fan, right, you can place over here, then place the ARGB connection. If your fans have the ARGB effects, you can connect over here. Same goes to the top, you can plug it over here. So it's very convenient. And as for the bottom fans, right, you can connect over here. There are 3. Plus, you have an ARGB. So all your fans are covered with ARGB effects and covered with all the connection point. And best part of all, at the back, at the rear, there is this header over here. You can plug your rear fan, and it's kind of like short distance, so it would be very neat. And another point for overclockers, whereby you do this in an open bench, these 2 switches are very handy, which is the reset and the power switch. You can just, you know, click as and when you like. You don't have to plug additional switch over here just to turn on the machine or to reset the machine. Now, there are also things that I dislike about this board. First of all, when I look through all the headers, right, there are no CMOS pin for me to clear CMOS. The only CMOS button that you can clear is at the back. So this is kind of like inconvenient if I were to mount this in the case, and if I want to reset the CMOS, right, I have to turn the case over or feel the case from the back and to press this, and this is not easily pressed. You need a pin to push it down. This is one of the flaws that I feel that ASRock should improve on. Now, next thing is that though I mentioned that the design are all very nice, I would still prefer that all this design on the armor shield and over here, right, these are not tape on it. They should do the example like the Riptide, where all the imprints are on the aluminum itself instead of having a tape. Reason being, right, this will definitely have some obstacle or obstruction on heat dissipation. So this is one of it. Now, next thing is that the antenna they have provided, okay, I just take down the base part. I hope that this is actually magnet, so that, you know, it will stay firmly in one area. You can just put it on a wall or things like that that has metal contact. And oh, speaking of which, sorry, I have to break this. I forgotten to mention about one thing. This board do provide you with a GPU mounting bracket, which is very functionable. Okay, now back to the bad points of it. Besides this, right, there's also another thing that I noticed. The Phantom Gaming Wi-Fi 7 series, which is this and the RIP type, they don't have a flashback BIOS for your, at the rear. You will need to do manual. So imagine that if let's say you are purchasing a latest version Gen 14 Intel processor, right, and this BIOS is actually old, you will need to get a generation 13 or generation 12 to update the BIOS manually through a USB thumb drive. So it will be good if the BIOS flashback button is provided. Now coming to the last section, which I really hate so much. So sorry about this, ASRock. See, this rattle is driving me nuts. So imagine that you mount this on the case itself, right, and if there are vibrations that affect this, you will be hearing rattling. So to tackle this problem, right, I find a method whereby make use of thermal pad, and I believe this is the correct way. Reason being, right, the heat dissipating from your M.2, right, might hit over here, and if you were to place any other material besides thermal pad, right, you might just insulate the heat from going to your armor heatsink over here. So having to say so, right, this is 2mm, and I'll just place it over here. Okay, then at the rear here, right, you just need one line over here. You don't have to be that much of a thermal pad. Okay, I've done this. So place back your armor shield. Okay, once you've done that, you can just plug it back in place. Okay, good. See, it doesn't rattle anymore. So this will stop all the noises, and the thermal pad will act as a in-between person to transfer the heat to your armor shield. Hope you guys have enjoyed what I've shared with you, and this motherboard to me is more than a mid-tier board. In fact, it's towards the high end. And who is this cater for? Well, to all-rounder, be whether you're a content creator, gamer, or a overclocker. For gamers, there are plenty of storage you can place your games, and especially there are two ports that are ultra fast, where you connect your mouse and keyboard. Where you play first-person shooter games, right, you will not lag. And of course, the Ethernet, which is 2.5 gig NIC, which is kind of fast, and on Wi-Fi 7. Now for content creator, right, you will not miss out too. Two of the Type-C port are running at a transfer rate of 20 gigabits per second, inclusive of all the storage that you can place your files and to encode them on compile. And as for overclockers, well, I would say that this is actually a good motherboard to overclock, based on the fact on all the engineering work from ASRock, right, the cooling solution inclusive of the back and all this over here, and the strengthening and such. And best part is 90mm choke, and with 2 EPS 8-pin connector, so this is more than enough for you to overclock. With this said, I'd like to thank ASRock to have provided this board for me to share with you guys, and to Tech Dynamic to have done the delivery. If you guys are new to my channel, welcome to my channel. If you like my content, do remember to subscribe and to click on the notification bell button. Till then, take care, goodbye, see ya.